Melissa, I just feel like what Donald Trump is doing is, frankly, what he has always done. He has been wildly and just aggressively consistent here with his criticism of the judiciary. Why are people surprised?
Well, so we shouldn't be surprised. We definitely saw this, Simone, in his first term. He was rebuked in his first term by the Chief Justice, who famously noted that we don't have Obama judges, we don't have Trump judges, we just have federal judges doing their level best. And again, we had this week the Chief Justice stepping out to say, again, that talk of impeachment of a federal judge because you disagree with his decisions is frankly inappropriate. I will note that perhaps the Chief Justice might not have been the person to have said this, given that he wrote the opinion in Trump versus the United States, which seems to have authorized the administration's muscular understanding of Article 2 and sort of broad and sweeping understanding of the powers that extend to the president. But nonetheless, he made a good point. It was definitely inappropriate. But this is completely par for the course. This is an administration that has always flouted judicial norms. And frankly, the way that it is done now, the accelerated nature of that disavowal of these ordinary norms that we've all observed is really alarming. And so I can confirm constitutional law scholars are a little worried at this point.
As you know, Ankush, because we spent quite a bit of time together, I am generally trying not to play Trump sound, don't want it to be gratuitous, but I think it is important for folks to hear how he responded to Justice Roberts' statement saying that impeachment isn't the appropriate avenue for contesting a ruling. This is from Tuesday. Take a listen.
He didn't mention my name in the statement. I just saw it quickly. He didn't mention my name, but many people have called for his impeachment, the impeachment of this judge. I don't know who the judge is, but he's radical left. He was Obama appointed. And he actually said we shouldn't be able to take criminals, killers, murderers, horrible, the worst people, gang members, gang leaders, that we shouldn't be allowed to take them out of our country. Well, that's a presidential job. That's not for a local judge to be making that determination.
So two things here. I don't know who the judge is, yet somehow he knows his entire CV. Two, what stuck out to me was that's a presidential job. That's not for a local judge to be making that determination. This is his vision of an imperial presidency, of a unilateral presidency.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the case that the people who were deported to El Salvador, the Venezuelans, received no due process. They received no real process at all. And so what Trump and the administration is asking the court is really just to have unfettered authority without any review by the courts whatsoever, which is a very, very dramatic and unsettling proposition, particularly given all sorts of other aggressive positions they've taken. With respect to the impeachment proposal, though, I think it's worth noting that this is not a credible threat. Because it would require a two-thirds majority in the Senate to convict anyone who, even if they were impeached in the House, if this judge were, and that is not going to happen because it would require more than a dozen Democrats to sign on. So I think there seems to be a couple other purposes here behind this sort of little campaign. One is potentially to sort of intimidate the judges, but they're not dumb. They know this isn't a credible threat, so I doubt that'll work. The other is presumably to sort of help explain to his base why he's losing these cases and to try to sort of generate maybe some support and have his supporters rally around him, because it is the only explanation so far for why he is losing, and it's not the real explanation. But the reason he's losing is because they whisked all these people away without any process whatsoever.
And therein lies the rub, Melissa, that, you have individuals who are here legally, who are here in many cases, not having committed a crime. And yes, they got swept up in this thing. You have, in the Venezuelan case, individuals who are saying, look, I'm not a member of a gang. The tattoo I have is from a soccer club, a soccer team that I support. This is the reality, and now you're layering on top of this the calling for the impeachment of judges, which has a through line to potential violence against these judges. I would like you to listen to Judge Esther Salas, who lost a child to political violence, and what she has to say about this moment.
I know the value of human life because I've lost the most important thing in my life. And once that genie is out of the bottle, there's no putting it back. So we have to remember that we may not, sometimes we say things in the heat of advocacy, but I just wish that people would realize that we got to tamp it down a bit, because God forbid someone is killed there's no turning back for that family. There's no turning back for that judge.
There's no turning back for that judge. And you look at a lot of the capitulation, and when there is a judge just doing jurisprudence, just doing the judge thing, and Donald Trump and his menagerie of maniacal idiots decide that, we don't like that ruling because you're just a local judge, somehow now that creates a different kind of permission structure that we should be concerned about.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. And calling it a permission structure, I think, is really apt. As Ankush said, these threats of impeachment are really paper tigers. These individuals are not going to be impeached by a majority of the House and a supermajority of the Senate. So that doesn't work. But I think what this is doing, and this is maybe a third explanation, is that it is cultivating this sense among the public that you can challenge judges and that maybe the work of judges isn't something that we need to obey and that we need to abide by, and that in fact, if we don't agree with judges, we can take matters into our own hands. And that can be something as simple as refusing to obey or moving towards something more extreme, like the kind of stochastic violence that Judge Salas was talking about. But either way, she is exactly right. These are real people doing real jobs. Their families are being targeted. And the thing that keeps them safe is the Marshal's Service. And the Marshal's Service, interestingly, is under the domain of the Department of Justice. And we had just this week Attorney General Pamela Jo Bondi talking about these lawless leftist judges. She is the very person that controls the security that keeps them safe.
I have a chill, and it's not just because the studio is very cold right now. It is literally, this is not hyperbole, Ankush. This is actually what is happening. And frankly, I am of the belief, and I wrote about this for MSNBC Daily like a month ago, I am of the belief that they're tearing down and they're pulling at the thread of the judges is to get people to believe that the judges are, in fact, doing things they are not supposed to do. They're outside of their purview, so that when they ignore a big thing that the judge says, when they ignore a ruling that doesn't have to do with some people we can't see over here that are now in El Salvador, but they ignore something else, that they have the public behind them. We saw this with January 6th. Donald Trump got an entire group of people to literally believe that somehow the last election was, quote unquote, stolen, and they had to stop the steal and to take up arms and go to the Capitol to defend their country and make sure everything is right. If he could do that with the election, why would people not believe that he can do that with our justice system?
Well, look, actually, this week, I did a long interview with a longtime former federal judge named Shira Scheindlin. She's been on the bench in Manhattan for 22 years. She made the exact same point that you just made. She made the exact same point. And not only, did Judge Salas suffer that unspeakable tragedy, there have been other judges, Judge Lefkoe in Chicago, who suffered a similar loss in her family as a result of just doing her job. The judge I spoke to said the exact same thing. The judges will do their best to tune this out, but also they live in the world and they see what's going on around them. They read the news and they cannot help but see, for instance, as Judge Scheindlin told me, this judge, the January 6th tape on a loop, and that it would be somewhat chilling to them. And I do think what Melissa said is very important, because the other function that this may be serving is sort of keep moving the line a little bit, because we are only a couple of steps away. I hope that they are large steps that will not be taken, but a couple of steps away from the worst case scenario that people have been contemplating, which is the administration outright refusing to obey a court order.
Okay, but somebody else has a question, but I feel like it's already happened. I mean, Alicia, have they not already obeyed the court order? Like, this is what I'm not understanding. Maybe I was never a lawyer. I just did the comms for the people who were the lawyers. But it feels like if a judge tells you don't put people on a plane or turn the plane around and you don't turn the plane around, you've ignored the court order. If a judge says do not deport this person and you deport this person, you've ignored the court order. What exactly else has to happen?
I don't think that's a rhetorical question. Go ahead, real quick.
I mean, we have been, I think, in the midst of what is a constitutional crisis for a long time. From the first day of this administration, we had this president saying he wasn't going to obey the TikTok ban. That was a ban that was passed by a bipartisan Congress and upheld by the Supreme Court. And he said, I'm going to do my own side deal. That was basically a giant middle finger to both branches of government. And now we have this. I mean, I'll call the question right here. I think we're in the middle of it. It's here.